someone is placing first, clearly they're doing something right. You should pay attention to them. Competition is not healthy. Let's just start with that. Competition is exciting. You have to do some really cool things with your body. Caring and being a nurturing human being, that's the definition of masculinity. I started doing some research and all roads pointed towards a plant-based diet. I decided to test the theory and to see if I could get stronger. I love the idea of seeing vegan athletes kicking butt and becoming even more inspired because of strength in numbers.
Welcome to the Viva Vegan podcast with me, Faye. My guest this week is Giacomo Marchese, a vegan fitness instructor and athlete. He's been vegan for over 10 years and involved in the fitness industry for over 2 decades. Giacomo is the co-founder of veganproteins.com and plantbuild.com, a non-profit organisation of strength-based vegan athletes who compete together. Giacomo, thank you again for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. This is a pleasure.
No, you're very welcome. Now, you're the co-founder of Vegan Proteins, Plant Build, and you also work with Vegan Strong. So for our audience, can you kind of give us a bit of a summary about what these different initiatives are?
Yes. At Vegan Proteins, we were the first and only supplement shop in the world that was vegan only. And then we pivoted and we became the first online vegan coaching company, and we still coach people to this day. Plant Build, we just passed our 10-year anniversary. We competed together a couple of weeks ago, actually. And we are the largest team of vegan strength athletes in the world that compete together in person. We've done it many times over. And we pride ourselves on being drug-free and natural athletes. We're very, very specific about that with who we select for the team. And finally, Vegan Strong is an effort to tour at mainstream fitness expos around the nation over here and possibly beyond in the future. And we create social proof and we educate in person to attendees who are fans of fitness or who are already into fitness. So we tour, go to mainstream events, we compete together in person, and then we coach people online.
Amazing. And I should say congratulations as well, because the Vegan Strong Plant Build team, you kind of came out of the 2023 Mr. America Sports Festival competition, right? And was it 41 medals that you won as a collective and 32 first place wins?
A lot of hardware. Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible. And as you say, it's totally social proofing, because you can show people, like, look at the benefits of a vegan diet in terms of what can be achieved.
Very much so. And obviously we have an agenda and we're biased and we have belief in what we do for reasons outside of competing and also performance-based reasons. But we try really hard to see what other people's perspectives are out there, whether the competitors or attendees, for example, and say, what do you see? As opposed to just obviously our activism means to us, like, okay, if someone is placing first, clearly they're doing something right. You should pay attention to them. But we also want to make sure to have good conversations with those who are watching us compete and perform, so that they can understand the benefits of a plant-based diet.
I mean, that's amazing. I mean, does it dispel myths around people thinking about how important meat is, especially in fitness, or eggs for, the protein argument? Is that something that you can go out and show people, and is it easy to have those conversations?
Well, honestly, a lot of times those conversations are quite painful, because people like to attack you and they like to challenge, or they like to kid, and they're not sure if their sense of humor is landing or not. And sometimes people are genuinely interested and they want to know how to eliminate meat and eliminate dairy from their diet. The beauty about what we do is that competition is not healthy. Let's just start with that. Competition is exciting. You have to do some really cool things with your body, but you're putting yourself in a very unhealthy position to be able to do something exceptional. So athletes are smart and they know that, and they want to take care of themselves. So while they're doing unhealthy things to get themselves to peak conditioning, they realize that they need to take that much better care of themselves. So when they understand the benefits of a plant-based diet, they're actually a lot more open to conversations like that. That being said, we don't only speak to competitive athletes, we speak to people who are very much so bought and sold on things like whey protein or eating meat to build muscle. And there's a lot of stigma around that, especially when it comes to men. Like all this politics of being masculine to eat meat, or attracting people to eating meat because it's sexy, for example. The advertising out here is very strong like that. A lot of stuff is pervasive and people don't even realize that's where they're coming from. So sometimes the conversations can be a little bit tricky.
Yeah, why do you think that is? That for men, masculinity still is associated with meat. I mean, you've got as you're doing now, you've got athletes who are at the top of their game. You've got people showing the benefits of a plant-based diet, not just in terms of what you eat, but in terms of like saving the environment and the planet, and for health reasons as well as the animals, of course. Why do you think it is so hard for men to kind of understand that and to get their head around that? I mean, not just men, but specifically.
I don't entirely know. It's hard for me to remove my bias, because for me, I think of living compassionately, and I say to myself, this is me protecting, and this is me caring and being a nurturing human being. And for me, that's the definition of masculinity, is being caring, being compassionate, and protecting defenseless animals who I'm much larger than, who I could easily hurt or kill if I wanted to. But why would I do that? Just to have something on my plate. And what about that makes me a man? Unfortunately, not everyone sees it that way, and they see the act of hunting and killing as something that makes them feel more powerful or more masculine. I don't really know. To me, it's shameful and depressing, because you have all this power, and with great power comes great responsibility. Put it that way. And I feel like it's much more manly to be compassionate, caring, and nurturing, and that's how you provide and protect.
No, it's a really good answer, actually. I mean, in terms of the kind of fitness side of things, because that's what you're kind of best known for, what are the kind of some of the essential foods that a vegan bodybuilder would eat to kind of maintain and grow muscle?
Tofu, tempeh, seitan, protein powder. Just like instead of whey protein, you'd have like pea protein or a blend of plant-based proteins, for example. So typically you build your meals around protein to make sure you're getting enough in to recover and to perform. But then you make sure to eat healthy whole foods that are nutrient dense. And plants have all the protein you need. They also have all the nutrients that you need. That's where you're going to be getting your vitamins, your minerals, your antioxidants, and all that, which creates an anti-inflammatory effect in your body. So you work out, the workouts produce an inflammatory response. Your system is triggered and says, oh, I need to repair, and I need to get to my next workout, and I need to rebuild this muscle. How does it do that? It does that with the nutrition you get from plants, and also with the protein that you make sure to get in throughout the day over the course of, say, 3 to 5 meals. Fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, grains, seeds, nuts, and any way that you can craft that creatively and enjoyable way to enjoy what's on your plate.
Oh, it's great. It's the kind of things that you're told, plenty of fruits, plenty of vegetables, and ensuring that you get enough protein into your diet, right? It's the kind of almost going back to basics, but making sure that you've got enough of what you need. Because obviously I'm shockingly not a bodybuilder, but could you maybe give us a bit of a rundown on the kind of foods that a vegan athlete would eat in a day while they're sort of bulking versus cutting?
Absolutely. So when bulking, you need to make sure that the food, it can be a little hard when you're eating a lot to make sure that your digestion is working well. So I tend to make sure I don't get too much fiber in when I'm eating a lot. So maybe I'll stick to like some white rice instead of brown rice if I feel like I'm getting too much fiber, for example, for extra carbs. But to just keep it simple and walk you through an average day, I'll wake up, I'll have oatmeal with protein and some fruit. And I will have some avocado in the morning as well, like avocado toast if I really need to bulk. Then for lunch, I'll have a nice bowl that's rounded out with vegetables and grains and like my favorite vegan meat, whether it's tofu, tempeh, seitan, or something store-bought, or something I make at home. Like I make my own vegan chicken, for example. I absolutely love it. Then for a snack during the day, I'll have a couple pieces of fruit, or maybe like some hummus and crackers or carrots or whatever. And then for dinner, it's similar to lunch. I'm having another blend of vegetables, grains, maybe some beans thrown into the mix if I want, and then another one of my favorite vegan meats. So I personally keep it simple. I stick to tofu or seitan. That's just me, but you can get very creative with it and you can make all kinds of really cool things. And then at the end of the night, if I want something sweet or a little extra nosh, like a snack or this or that, or maybe a handful of nuts, for example, just make sure I'm eating enough, I could do that too.
Amazing.
That's a bulk.
Yeah.
On a cut, you would get rid of the nuts, you get rid of the avocado, you have smaller servings of the grains and the oats, but the other things would still remain.
And have you, I mean, in terms of, you've been in the fitness industry for kind of 2 decades now, and prior to that, what were you kind of like growing up? Is this something that's always interested you? Were you always conscious about what you were eating and putting into your body?
Let's see. When I was in high school, I wanted to feel confident enough to make the tennis team. Up until then, I had lacked confidence and I had shied away from sports, even though I was pushed into them as a child. Influence, I should say. So I wanted to have confidence to be an athlete. And that encouraged me to start to figure out and learn how to eat better. I also was bullied a lot and I did not know how to handle that. So exercising was an outlet for me and a way for me to gain confidence in myself and do something that no one could take away from me. I could get stronger. You could hurt me, you could come after me, but you couldn't take that away from me. When I was at the gym, it was just me and the weights. And I wanted to be noticed. I wanted to feel attractive. So feeling attractive, escape from being bullied in a way to try to feel more confident, and to also want to get involved in sports instead of being scared to play them. And that all happened around high school. That's when it started for me.
And when did you kind of become vegan or aware of veganism?
Well, as a young adult, after doing my first bodybuilding competition and after becoming a personal trainer, I wanted to lead by example and be healthier and help others. And when I quickly realized that you can't preach to somebody and you can't tell someone what to do, you can change what you do and how you do it. So after someone who I was close to at the time had a heart attack, and I realized that the doctors were like, just go home and don't stress. That's probably why this happened. That's more about what you can do. You could just not stress and just, be a little more modest and moderate with what you eat and how you eat, but don't really worry about it. I said, that can't be the answer. How is that going to reverse heart disease? Even as a young adult, I knew that. So I started doing some research and all roads pointed towards a plant-based diet for heart health. And I decided to test the theory and to see if I could get stronger and see if it would negatively affect my performance. And spoiler alert, it didn't.
Good. I mean, in terms of kind of working up towards bodybuilding as well, can you kind of give us a bit of context behind how it works? Because the bodybuilding side of things is very different, isn't it, to strength building?
Yes. Bodybuilding is very much so about managing your body composition and going through bulking and cutting cycles so that you can put on muscle and then take off the fat without losing muscle and then do it again. So it's a lot of body manipulation, even when you're not trying to get stage ready. And that is actually quite stressful. It's a year-round discipline, believe it or not. And then when you're actually competing, now you're taking your body to an extreme, a place where it doesn't want to go on its own. And that's when you start getting into focusing on losing as much body fat as possible while maintaining as much muscle as possible. And it is also very much so about what you look like and how you present yourself. So you have to think about your shape and what you want it to look like. And you also have to think about how to pose and how to perform on stage. There's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of pageantry that goes into it. There's a lot of discipline that goes into it year round. And there's a lot of work to get your body to look like that. And there's a lot of recovery after the fact, where you have to focus on getting your body to a healthier place and your mindset back to a healthier place.
Is that quite difficult for people, initially going into bodybuilding? I'd imagine that you can kind of come at it from a disciplined approach, but then having to be that kind of diligent, day in and day out to really work towards that, not just physically, but, like you say, psychologically as well. Is it quite difficult for people who are entering that world? Oh, yeah.
We warn people all the time because you see what someone looks like when they bodybuild, and you say to yourself, I want to look like that. So I'm going to do it. And that's fine. Like, we don't want to demotivate someone or say that you can't look like that or you shouldn't try to look like that. But you also should know what you're getting into, because it's a big ask of yourself. And if you're not aware of the risks, you can wind up really hurting yourself. And we've dealt with many athletes over the years who don't come out of it the same. And sometimes we fear, because we're not in touch with everyone that we've ever worked with or that has come to us or that we've seen out there. Like, sometimes you don't ever recover. So there's a lot of inherent risks with competition that it's helpful to be aware of them before the fact. That way you're less likely to fall victim to them long term.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So it's it's huge. I mean, the repercussions, like you say, as well, there, not just in the kind of lead up to it, but then coming out of it again. In terms of Mr. America, obviously, which you've recently done, what are the kind of weeks leading up to that? What do they look like for an athlete?
Leading up to Mr. America, for any sport, you say?
For any of the sports, but within Mr. America specifically, it's something that's not as big over here in the UK, so it's just something I'm kind of curious about.
Well, it's a big sports festival. There's a lot of fanfare around it, and athletes are getting ready to show their stuff in various sports. For our team specifically, for the Vegan Strong Plant Build team, we get ready to put a message out there. So we prepare ourselves to get together and to gather some footage showing how we train and how we eat. And we're preparing for all that as a team. And then as a team, we're also preparing to enter into the competition and cheer each other on and perform at our best. So there's a lot of work that's involved in that, but it is also a blessing as a bunch of adults to be able to compete together and have that kind of camaraderie. So it's a whole lot of fun. Preparation-wise, though, there are all kinds of things that you have to do for different sports. Like, making weight can be quite stressful. So you have an athlete that is flying from somewhere, whether it's overseas or from a different part of the country, and flying can disrupt their body weight and can cause stress in their systems. And now they have to make weight. So there's like all kinds of like crazy food preparations. People are packing scales, they're packing special kind of food. They're thinking about when they got to sweat out to make weight, blah, 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 what they're going to do afterwards to recover. Bodybuilders are getting their bodies prepared and they're practicing their posing, and they're even more particular different. So there's like a lot of interesting things that happen behind the scenes. You got to manage your sleep to make sure that your sleep doesn't suffer. You have to manage your body weight for every single sport. And you have to wind up doing all kinds of interesting things, preparing to and then on site. Plus, you have to peak your body to get ready to perform, whether you're a power lifter to make sure you're going to have the strength to lift on meet day, whether you're a bodybuilder to make sure your body's going to look a certain way on competition day. There's all kinds of interesting things that people do to be ready for competition day.
Well, I mean, just the scope of that, for one person to kind of be that aware all the time, that's a lot. I mean, in terms of it as well, have you seen that there's a difference between, say, plant-based and vegan or non-vegan bodybuilding, in terms of recovery time or inflammation or even preparing themselves, for that day when they go into things? Is there any difference that you've seen, or is it the same focus?
Well, I feel like vegans, it's like when someone says, I did this because of my faith. I did this because God is great. And that's their religion, that's their faith, that's their discipline. It really pushes them. And there's something to be said about someone that has that kind of trust in a higher power. So for vegans, they feel like they're putting a good message out into the world, and they are, and they're living compassionately. And there's a lot of strength in that. There's a whole lot of strength in feeling compassionate and feeling like you're leaving less of a carbon footprint in this world, and that you're doing this for something that is far greater than yourself. You'd be surprised how much that motivates you and pushes you and inspires you to be at your absolute best. And that's not something that you can do from diet alone. Yeah,
true. I guess it's the whole ethos behind it as well, isn't it? In terms of veganism and ethics and where you stand. And it is a kind of belief system in what matters to you and what you're driving towards.
Absolutely. Like, for example, Nick Squires tore his bicep like 6 months ago. Hey, you could just say that he's a do or die kind of athlete, and that's why he recovered and he kept going. But I would like to believe that he had a purpose before he went to compete at Mr. America. And even though he tore his bicep, and by all means, like, he probably shouldn't have competed, or like Ryan Stills, his shoulder needs to be replaced eventually. He can't be under a bar to squat regularly. He can only be under a bar for like 3 weeks before he competes, but he's doing other things to still be a strong squatter. But even with all these variables, they have something that they want to do and they have purpose behind it. So they're still able to compete. It means something. After Mr. America, I noticed the motivation and inspiration was palpable across everyone who volunteered, across all the athletes. People came back motivated to be at their absolute best. When you're trying to be an expert at something, you have to put 10,000 plus hours over the course of 10 to 20 years into it. You're not going to be motivated. You're not even going to have a reason to keep going. The only thing you have to do is keep repeating the process. But I tell you what, it certainly helps to have good reasoning and a good motive to do what you're doing. You're likely to train with more intensity and stick with it.
No, that's brilliant. And it's like you said as well, having that camaraderie of people, like with the plant build team around you as well. You've got other people who are kind of on the same journey, albeit in different competitions and things like that. Can you tell me a little bit about how the plant build team came into being and how it's grown over the years?
Yes. About 10, 15 years ago, one of my closest friends decided that he wanted to get 3 bodybuilders together. So Robert Cheek and I were 2 out of the 3, but it was an idea that never came to be. And then after he'd given me his car, when he moved away, because we were living near each other at the time, I said, Robert, I'm going to take your car, I'm going to sell it, and I'm going to use that money, and I'm going to take the torch that you passed this way that I'm grabbing, and I'm going to make this thing happen. So I reached out to some friends in the community. I said, hey, can we do this thing? 10 bodybuilders answered, and we started a team. It was the first time we competed. Then where we competed at the time, it was only a bodybuilding show, and then it became a sports festival with multiple sports. And we said to ourselves, what if we started competing in multiple sports? And the idea kept growing and growing and growing. We created fundraisers to raise awareness, to get the community involved. We started taking all of those funds, every bloody cent, and we donated it to animal sanctuaries, and we donated to vegan advocacy groups. We wholeheartedly believed that this had to be a completely selfless thing, and that it needed to make as much of a difference as possible. And it just became this larger than life idea that took a life onto its own. And then it was dormant for a while. But once Vegan Strong came into play for like 6 years straight, we decided to join forces where we could tour and we could also compete together. We've been doing that for the last 3 years. But there's still more of a reason than ever for us to be out there. That's what I think. And ideally, we'll be able to keep doing this together for the long term. I've never seen a more successful and more motivated team than the one that just competed. And that's coming from a place of very high expectations, because we've gotten like 7 teams together over the past decade. And each time we go out there, it's just incredibly inspiring. These athletes are so driven. And yet, past couple weeks, like, again, I've never seen it like this. Essentially, the idea just keeps getting better and better as far as how we go out there and do our thing.
That's amazing. And I mean, when you first started it, did you ever encounter sort of stigma from other athletes, within that kind of world? Or were they very accepting of what you were out to do?
Speaking from personal experience, I'm typically scared of what people are going to say and how they're going to respond. Sometimes I approach it and I have a lot of confidence. Other times I'm a little fearful, even though I won't admit it, how people are going to respond. But you stand your ground, you do really good, and people are actually pretty receptive. I remember one specific year where other athletes started to ask us questions about what we were doing. I was like, oh, wow. And then other athletes were going vegan because of what we were doing. I was like, this is cool. Okay. So people are receptive. Other times we'll go to an event and someone will have a discussion with us and they're open, but they're still going to do their thing. Like, oh, I hunt, but I understand the connection to animals because I hunt. And that gives me pause. as far as what you're doing. The health aspect, I couldn't care less about that. Like, I don't even necessarily believe that it's a healthier diet, but I can see that I understand the connection with animals because I hunt and kill them, so maybe I shouldn't. And that's what's really getting me thinking. So you do have conversations like that in person. Then you have other conversations with someone's like, well, I just really love the taste of meat. I'm like, yeah, I love the taste of meat too, but I just couldn't love the taste of something doesn't mean that I see it as food or I'm going to eat it. So you meet all kinds of people.
That's amazing. I mean, you're USA based now, but do you have plans to see this kind of expand beyond America, like into Europe or Africa or Asia?
I hope so. There's an event somewhere out by you in the London, UK area that someone told me about. I don't remember the name of it. I feel like ideally we'll be able to branch out and compete in other countries. It might be a little challenging, a little tricky, but it could be in the cards for us in the future. But for now, I can tell you with certainty that as long as we get the green light to keep doing this from the powers that be, that we'll be doing this for the foreseeable future, including next year. I love the idea of seeing vegan athletes kicking butt and becoming even more inspired because of strength in numbers. You have athletes that were already motivated, that are already loud and proud about what they're doing, and they're coming home and they're having even more conviction in what they're doing, and they're doing even more. So even just from a team-based standpoint, it's empowering. From a community-based standpoint, obviously, it's inspiring. And then in broader circles and spheres in the mainstream, that's where we really hope to hit hard. And we continue to focus our efforts there as opposed to the community only.
Amazing. Yeah, I think once people kind of see how well you're performing and how well you're doing, and like you're saying, people start to come to you with questions, and even if they're just thinking a little bit more about it, you're already making a change, even if it's small in that person's life. And it just takes time, doesn't it? Like with anything, for that to kind of grow and grow. And with access to things like the internet and competitions and things like that, where people are actively watching these things, then it's just a matter of time before the kind of message gets out there a little bit more.
Exactly. And we're just going to keep building that out again and again and again, year after year. I was particularly impressed with this year's team because we took first in every single sport.
Wow.
And we won some titles too. There was Ryan Stills who won Best Lifter. If there were enough lifters, Katia Gorbacheva would have won Best Female Lifter. Kettlebell sport, we took first place. We've already broken an Olympic world record in kettlebell sport. Bodybuilding, we had the most pro athletes that we've ever had on stage at once, so they placed relatively well, including one of our athletes, Nadej, who had our pro debut. We had strongman. We won the overall title in strongman in men and women's, and we had another first place in strongman. CrossFit, we won the men and women events, and we won the women overall. It was just laughable. Like everywhere you turn, everyone was just taking home all of the medals. And this is one of the most competitive sports festivals in the country, and arguably the world. And the thing I love about it, again, is that it's centered around drug-free, natural athletes. There is drug testing on site for the majority of the sports. And that is something, again, that we feel very strongly about our particular approach. Not knocking anyone who takes steroids or performance-enhancing drugs for any particular reason. There are plenty of elite athletes out there that should be celebrated that need to do stuff like that. For us particularly, though, that is not our thing. And fortunately, we have an arena to compete just like that with a relatively even playing field.
I mean, that's incredible in itself, isn't it? The fact that you don't need enhancements, that you're doing this completely naturally, that it's derived from plants and, sheer effort and physical training and, the mentality side of things as well. It's really setting a precedent that you've taken so many titles this year. Like you say, that's a lot of metalware. And these are all plant-based. Sure, that in itself is going to just get people asking questions and say, that's the only example you can set by breaking all these records. It's amazing. It's an incredible feat.
Exactly. And we're talking about people from all walks of life. We're talking about doctors, scientists, athletes, nurses, all kinds of professionals from all walks of life. We have a very, very diverse team with a whole lot of talent and a whole lot of heart.
It's amazing, really amazing. I mean, you first went vegan, was it for health reasons back in 2004? Is that correct? It was, and if
Personally,
so, yeah.
yes. Back in 2004, I went vegan for health reasons.
Are you able to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, absolutely. Let's see. So I felt that I could take dietary cholesterol out of my diet and that my health markers would improve and that I would be able to live long. And by living long, as an athlete, that means that you get to be at the top of your game, because being more competitive is more of a marathon than a sprint. It's about doing something consistently over a long period of time. And then I found again that through the way that I was eating, that I was going to wind up being much healthier and perform better and recover better, which was a side benefit. I will also say, though, that when I was seeking support, I started to be connected to what was on my plate. I was with an animal rescuer at the time, and she started to open up my eyes. She's like, I run this kitty rescue, and animals are not food. And what you're no longer eating, that was an animal. An animal had to die. I was like, wow. I was 23 years old at the time. I had not made that connection on my own. So the very next year or so, I made a pact with myself on my birthday, because it was a day that I won't forget. I said, I'm not going back. From this day forth, what is on my plate, there's no in between. I have to go fully plant-based and embrace a vegan lifestyle. And then I started to get deeper and deeper into eating others so that I could turn it into a lifestyle.
I mean, that makes complete sense. And it's when you start to kind of join those dots and meet other people that you kind of get that understanding, don't you, around, the undeniable exploitation of animals, what we're doing to the planet. And you kind of see the reality behind what's actually going on. For something as simple as eating that you don't always think about, you suddenly start to see the bigger picture and it unfolds. And once you kind of understand that, it's very, very hard to go back. Not that you'd want to anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Once you have conviction of what you're doing, and it's not just about diet, there is literally no going back. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unknow what you know. And that's where it sticks, honestly.
I mean, just by your nature as an athlete, I mean, you have to be competitive, right? But is there a part of you that kind of thrives on working towards showing the importance of veganism, to people, even if it has historically been the unpopular choice?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Yeah, I tease that idea out all the time. I even encourage people to come after me. Someone might crack a joke and I'm like, okay, so you eat steak. I mean, you want to eat a piece of steak in front of me? Is that supposed to offend me? Like, why are you here? What do you really want to say? Like, let's break down some walls. Like, please have this conversation with me. I couldn't care less. So for me, it's a little different because I'm desensitized and I'm also constantly exposed to these conversations. But for the average person, it could be a little challenging because just by living a certain way and you don't necessarily want to be bothered, you're winding up being involved in these conversations, which you could see as an opportunity, but maybe you don't want to have these conversations with people. So I can understand why it gets a little uncomfortable for people sometimes when they're not really looking for conversations like that, even though they are potential opportunities. Without having to be an activist, there are potential opportunities to help other people out. Sometimes those can be very frustrating conversations because people project their own, whatever they're questioning, they project onto you, put it that way, because of your lifestyle and how you're living.
That's true. And there's kind of a form of activism as well, and just being able to have those conversations with people, even if they get a bit riled up with them sometimes, it's kind of still very important to do that. And I can see how you'd enjoy that as well, particularly if you're competitive, to kind of be like, actually, these are the facts, and there's a sick enjoyment sometimes, I have it myself, where you can kind of, depopularize myths and things like that with facts and science. And I get a lot of joy from that, in all honesty. So
I would imagine.
As a quick question for you as well, where do you see the vegan strong movement headed next?
That is a very good question. We connect with companies who want to incorporate vegan into their marketing. And we want to get their products in people's hands, because that means that people have access to plant-based snacks, supplements, and stuff like that that can help them make the switch. That's a large part of our focus when we tour. We will continue to go to fitness expos and educate. We do cooking demos. We do presentations and lectures. We've done lifting demos in the past. We reach as many people as possible by manning a booth and having conversations with whoever will stop by and speak to us for a couple of minutes. I feel like that would be at the core of what we do. As far as the athletes go, I think whatever we can do to be active year round, so that the performance that what we do when we compete gives us the opportunity to have more conversations. I would like to focus more on that too with the team. The team gets very motivated to inspire year round. So building up more opportunities to have conversations in person at places other than fitness expos will be important. And then hopefully, if all goes well, Danny and I are going to come out to London again next year, but this time not for pleasure. We'll hopefully be at the UK Veg Fest. It's been a want of ours for a while. So I think if all goes well schedule-wise, we'll be there next year.
That's amazing. Well, I mean, yeah, and we'll look out for you definitely. That kind of leads perfectly into something that we're going to be doing at Viva as well. We're going to be launching a health and fitness YouTube playlist, which, Giacomo's been really instrumental in helping us with. And we're going to be speaking to several members of Vegan Strong, just about how they inspire and inform individuals to be healthy, strong, and competitive on a plant-based diet. So you will hear more on that in the new year. So again, thank you for that, Giacomo, for letting us do that with you.
Of course, and thank you for your interest in helping us spread the word. I hope that you'll enjoy the interviews with the other athletes that we have on the team. We have a lot of truly inspirational people here that have a message.
Brilliant. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you today. So thank you once again for joining us. And thank you very much.